let's commence our 3-hour discussion of the end of everything.
The end of everything. All right. Welcome to the Real World Podcast, aka the end of everything. We are dusting off Mike and Matt's X-Cellent Adventures for potentially the last time ever. I mean, there's going to be X-Men films in the future, but why bother? Because they made the definitive one now, and it's called Logan. So we're back. I'm Matt Waters. I'm joined by Mike Thomas, founder of The Real World. We call him the Godfather around here, me and no one else who works for this site. Mike, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm okay.
Hashtag very okay.
Well, I'm not well, but I'm okay. I'm very okay.
Very okay, there you go. So this is the Real World Podcast, more specifically Mike and Matt's X-Cellent Adventures, where we take a deep dive into the entire history of X-Men. I'm explaining this because there is a medium chance that, you know, this is a recent movie that's come out and you've just stumbled across it for those reasons. You may not know that we're crazy people that have reviewed every X-Men film and all the series in podcast form before. So if you didn't know that, go check them out. EnterTheRealWorld.com, SoundCloud.com/Mike and Matt, etc., etc. And if you like this, keep listening to us. Anyway, it's Logan time. So after two pretty shitty outings as Wolverine in a solo film before, Hugh Jackman is back, James Mangold is back, and they did it. They finally made a Wolverine film that's super fucking good. There's kind of, I don't know, part of me wants to essentially have you talk through the opinion piece you wrote where you're saying goodbye to the X-Men films or the original lineup. And then there's the part that wants to break it down traditionally. We'll probably end up doing both. But just on the surface of it, before we get into anything, I think this is, like, when I immediately finished watching it, I believed it to be the best X-Men film there is. I expect as time goes by, and if I see it a second time maybe, I will walk that back a tiny bit, but while I'm still living in the now of having seen Logan, I thought it was absolutely tremendous and easily the best film in the franchise. Mike, I think you're not quite that up on it, but I can't imagine you thought it was anything but very good.
It's good. Don't let anything I say after this make question the fact that it's obviously good. My journey with X-Men is so personal, and I have such an attachment to it that until the final weeks before this was released, I was rather indifferent towards this film as a whole. Mm-hmm. If any of the half dozen of people who listen to our podcast recall our discussion of the future of X-Men podcast, we were both pretty low.
Oh yeah, there was literally no reason to think this was going to be good. As the good reviews started pouring in, I was like, okay, whatever.
Like, my best case scenario when this film was announced was like, just make a fun movie, because there's no chance you're going to make anything remotely special. I had no faith in James Mangold as a director, especially after the Wolverine. I like 310 to Yuma. Walk the Line is fine, but these aren't movies that I point to and be like, this guy can do anything. Especially when he already had a chance with a Wolverine movie, and I thought it was
boring,
remarkably unspectacular in a way where I think it's actually, if I had to pick the least watchable X-Men movie, that is probably the one.
Oh yeah, I would rather watch Origins, even though it's like aggressively
objectively
bad.
Worse. Yeah, it's objectively worse. It's aggressively, insultingly bad.
But Wolverine's really boring.
Yeah. And we had discussed, when we were running down the cast, we were like, okay, well, this is kind of weird. God, Stephen Merchant's not even fucking playing Morph. That was the one thing you and I seemed to be hanging our hat on. Is maybe this will be fun.
Yeah. No, it's fucking Caliban. He's an albino.
Yeah. And I had no expectations for this. I did not. If it wasn't for this podcast, I wasn't even convinced I would see it in the theater.
Sure.
I just figured they're going to fuck it up again. Hugh Jackman is inconsistent as Wolverine in the sense that when the script and the director don't know what they're doing, he cannot compensate for that. We learned that in Last Stand. We learned that in Origins. And we learned that when it's unspectacular in the Wolverine, he can't elevate it past that. And it looked emo, it looked moody in ways that really dragged down the first two Wolverine movies. And I was just like, this is not going to be good. There's no way that this is going to be... I should say the margin of error is so small at this point. They've narrowed down the cast so much, and then the reviews started pouring in. And not only were the reviews nearly universally positive, there was talk of best comic book movie ever, best superhero movie ever. Better than The Dark Knight was a popular talking point that I saw. And obviously at this point I became intrigued. My ears perked up and I was like, okay, what the fuck is going on? Because this doesn't make any fucking sense in the world. There's no way this movie should be that good.
Yeah.
But I was intrigued now for the first time. I was like, okay, now I want to see this movie. And then at some point, that was about 2 weeks before I actually saw it, 2 weeks before it came out in the States. And then about a week before, I started having this feeling of dread about the movie. Not in that it wasn't going to live up to it, because I didn't really expect it to live up to best superhero movie ever, better than The Dark Knight. I need that really the highest praise. I never expected, even with movies I expect to like, I don't allow myself to expect the highest praise being how I'll come out of it. But I had this feeling of dread about it suddenly, and it goes way beyond just a typical film experience, something I care about. I was just like, something about this is just like, I almost don't want to watch it. And I was like, part of me was like, I was afraid of how sad it would make me. I had a sense, it was painfully obvious from the first trailer that Xavier was going to fucking die, because they just had to show a fucking shot of Jackman and the fucking little girl from The Last of Us, holding hands after Wolverine is clearly burying somebody. I don't know why the first trailer had to show that, but whatever.
Well, we had the working theory that he wasn't actually ever even alive, but that was immediately proved wrong. First scene he's in, it's like, oh no, he's real.
It seemed pretty clear that Jackman wanted the definitive end here, so it seemed pretty clear that this was going to be his end as well for Wolverine. Wolverine was going to die. And all this feeling of dread was washing over me over and over and over again. And I went into this movie less prepared for something great and more just prepared for something emotionally devastating. Mm. Because, there's something cathartic about being emotionally devastated at the same time as much you don't want to experience it at the same time. It's complicated. Maybe this is somewhat unique for me, but
no.
And I got to the end of this movie, this very good movie, that is both funny, entertaining, exciting, dramatic, fun, in a way that no Wolverine movie's ever been before, compelling, heart-wrenching, emotional, all these wonderful things. And I'm like, I am not sad right now. Why am I not sad? And so I explored and unpacked that reaction to it. Because Charles Xavier obviously died about 2/3 of the way through. Wolverine is killed in the second to last scene of the movie. # spoiler. They wrap in, I wouldn't say shoehorn daddy issues, but, they kind of sneak that in there, particularly right at the end. Mm. It's not that I didn't feel anything in these final moments of the movie, but this movie did not rip out my heart in the way that I think it should have or was designed to do, and clearly did for other people.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, in no small part due to the fact this movie was a beautiful swan song for Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart's performances as Wolverine and Charles Xavier, respectively. Oddly enough, without really realizing it, Patrick Stewart appeared in all 3 Wolverine movies. The only other character to appear in more than one, the only other actor to appear in more than one. And I was just like, I'm sad that their endings in a way made me sad, but I realized in these moments, towards the end of the film, that this wasn't, as I kind of expected, this wasn't the end of just these 2 characters. the two performances that these two actors had. But this was the end of X-Men 2000. A year ago now, you and I went on a journey to rewatch them, and when you rewatch those first two movies, there's something truly special about what they had there. Not perfect, but special and unique, and that vision and that promise of what they started back then had never been fulfilled. And it had never been fulfilled because the third film was such a gigantic botch in just about every way possible that it almost was a franchise killer to a certain extent. And I should have been able to coldly kind of just move away from that promise, that original vision ever since then. But the fan in me, the person who loved these characters and loved those original ideas and tone, everything from those first two movies, I couldn't let it go. And there was always something deep down in me that expected somehow we were going to fix this, we were going to set it right, there would be some sort of closure on it. And I also couldn't let it go, and in fact, because this franchise couldn't let them go. Ever since The Last Stand, if anything, the modus operandi of the film since then has been like, fuck anything that's come before this. We're going to tell the story that we think... We're going to tell our story in a way that we think our story needs to be told. It started right away with Origins Wolverine. You can try to pretend that Sabretooth is the same Sabretooth that appeared in the first X-Men film, but that is completely irrational. But they decided we want to tell this story. This is the best way to tell this story. Same thing with First Class. There's no rational way to justify Mystique in that being the same Mystique as the first three movies, but they want to tell their story. And obviously there have been varying degrees of success. But at the same time, they never could let go of those original stories, and they kept kind of, whether purposely or not, playing off that original vision, those original characters, in a way they never let them go. And then with Days of Future Past, it seemed to be that, okay, this is our closure, let's make up for it in a little way, let's bring some sort of sense of resolution to the original vision of X-Men there. And they did it against all odds. It was one of the highest degree of difficulties I've ever seen for an action film, although the Bryan Singer X-Men movies have never actually been action films. And they said goodbye. And it wasn't a goodbye that paid respect to every single character that it should have, but it said goodbye in a fitting and satisfying way. And in that goodbye, the story goes that Wolverine went back into the past to save the future, and he saved the future for the X-Men. And that was fine. That was a great decision from a storytelling standpoint. It was a great balance of business and storytelling coming together to be like, let's do what we can here to do right by as many people as possible. And in that year, in 2024, in the X-Men story, the future is saved. In the story in Logan, it is 5 years later, and all those people are fucking dead again. And their stories do not get to be told. Their deaths do not get to be shown. Their appearances merely get to be hinted at. And something about this just felt unfair and unsatisfying, in that in the end, it's still all about fucking Wolverine. And to a much lesser extent, Patrick Stewart's Charles Xavier. And I was just like, you told this really, really wonderful story here. But you had 9 films to tell the story of X-Men, and this is a beautiful conclusion to 2 of those characters. But man, you really fucked it up along the way, and everything about this film reminded me of that.
Is that this film's fault?
No. I'm not saying it is. I'm not pretending that it is. This film defined success in a very narrow way, and it achieved success by hitting everything it needed to hit. But my reaction to it is not entirely rational. My reaction to it is not emotionless. My reaction to it is, fuck what could have been. And I don't know. I'm certainly glad they went on a high note for 2 very, very important characters. They blew it, though, overall in the big picture with X-Men. And that's not this film's fault, and you can even argue that this film has nothing to do with that. But it was impossible for me to watch this film and not recognize how badly they botched that. I think that, for me, distorted my feelings on this slightly.
Did Apocalypse not give you that sense? though. Like, for me, what X-Men was ended with Days of Future Past, and did not include the Wolverine solo films, did not include Last Stand. It barely included First Class. Like, that's almost separate and, like, coincidentally good, you know? Like, for me, the three, like, OG X-Men films are 1, 2, and Days of Future Past.
And sure, and perhaps, I mean, in this case, I think you're being more rational about it than I am, but, you know, they couldn't let it go. Like, they never moved on fully. And this is them finally moving on from that. And
well, I think Bryan Singer never moved. I think he regretted walking away, and he spent the time since tinkering to try and get it back. I think James Mangold doesn't give a fuck about the history of X-Men, and he just wanted to make his Wolverine film.
And that's fine. I'm not mad at James Mangold. I'm not mad at anybody. This is not a criticism of the film.
No, I know.
This is a attack on the failure of the larger picture of X-Men, and in a way that I could not fully separate from this movie experience.
Sure. Before we get into the film, I am actually really curious, from hearing you talk about it and from reading what you wrote about it, what to you was that original vision of X-Men that they've gotten away from? Or the promise they didn't make good on?
It's a very fair question. I think, honestly, it was just...
Not Marvel?
No, not necessarily. I think the promise was just simply they had a story that they never got to finish telling properly. I think Days of Future Past is kind of like the best they could have possibly had done in that situation by that point. I think the damage had already been done, though.
Oh, absolutely. And, X-Men hasn't been, like, cool since Last Stand. It used to be, like, a huge deal, and now it's like, oh, First Class is pretty good, but it's not, like, the hotness, you know?
They are a series that still constantly has to prove itself, and where the merits of which are judged film to film. No matter the fact that First Class, Days of Future Past, and Logan are objectively successful, both financially and critically, you would never... And Deadpool, by the way.
Yeah, and
you would never know that.
Deadpool's the only one, though. Like, I think Deadpool, like, had a big buzz, but, like, people don't perceive that as an X-Men thing. But yeah, you're right, generally. The way people talk about X-Men, it's like a C-tier franchise or something. It's like, no.
Yeah, it's still judged film to film, and that's probably, I mean, that's their own fault in a lot of ways. But, like, for instance, I think it's very interesting to note the reactions to Deadpool and to Logan versus the reaction to Apocalypse. And I accept that there's an argument to be made that Deadpool and Logan are clearly better than Apocalypse, or succeed at what they're trying to do. They definitely succeed at what they're trying to do better than Apocalypse.
Well, they're both very different, and Apocalypse is like most
that's my point, is that,
wannabe Marvel film they've made.
That's what I'm trying to get to, because one is Logan and Deadpool are incredibly standalone films that, in a lot of ways, I mean, with Logan, you can enjoy Logan without seeing anything that had come before it. Yep. And that is not an insult to the film, to be clear. I'm trying to, what I perceive to be, explain why the extra popularity, the extra critical acclaim for it. Deadpool, similarly, like, it is, if anything, it's distracting to know what happened in the other films when you're watching these films.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, what? We just saved the fucking future. They're all dead again?
But was it this future, Mike?
Wait, we know that's not Colossus, and and this isn't so much of an insult as I'm really trying to just, like, get down to, you don't need to know the other movies to enjoy these movies, and I do think there is a general fatigue with cinematic universes already, because Marvel accomplished it, at least definitely objectively from a business standpoint, so well, and I think from most people's perspectives, artistically fairly well, that everyone is now copying them. And it's
Transformers Extended Universe, G.I. Joe Extended Universe,
the King Kong, Godzilla Extended Universe, the Mummy and Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Like, this is like Extended Universe is going to be our immediate present for like a dozen franchises. Apocalypse, which did not act as a standalone film, which embraced so much of the mythology of the disaster and on a macro level the X-Men franchise artistically is, and tried to, tell a coherent continuation, and did it, I think we both agree, moderately well, and certainly very enjoyable. Did not achieve fully what it was trying to achieve, and thus was very readily dismissed. Whereas Deadpool and Logan got so far away from that component of storytelling that probably allowed them the freedom to do what they wanted to do more, and then was just roundly just accepted. But I guess really to get back to your question, I don't want to say it's negative that they ignored so much. I think the best thing X-Men could do going forward is frankly just to tell a series of one-shots.
Yep.
If they can get the same actors to play the same roles, wonderful. But you have to go zag when everyone else is zigging, and they just need to tell these series of one-shots because they're working well.
Yeah.
Even Deadpool, which I don't have the fondness for that you and a lot of our people have for, I accept what it is, and I appreciate it for what it is, and I think its success is to be studied, not to be dismissed.
Well, it's that it did what you're saying. It flew in the face of big, epic. I know it's silly and wacky, but it is in some ways a small, intimate story that's just fun and not connected and not...
Yeah.
You don't need to do all your homework before you go watch it. That's what Logan is, but, they're tonally extremely different.
But at the same time, maybe others can just ignore what came before this movie better than I can, or they want to. I don't want to. I don't want to, this is with Deadpool, it's very easy to ignore what came beforehand just because who's going to hate Deadpool just because Colossus looks and sounds different? But
better.
Logan and Charles Xavier and this version of X-Men runs much deeper than that.
So, did you want James Marsden and Famke Janssen and Anna Paquin to appear in this film?
I've thought about that a lot since then. During the movie, when I realized relatively early on that they were adopting the Old Man Logan conceit that I thought they were going to stay completely away from, honestly. Because in Old Man Logan, the comic book, Wolverine was tricked by Mysterioso, what the fuck?
Mysterio, yeah.
I don't know, the guy who...
From Spider-Man, Fishbowl Head.
Yeah, the guy who puts visions in
Mysterio.
Yeah. And he tricked Logan into killing all the X-Men. And that is why Logan has chosen a life of exile, and that's why he's chosen to never take out his claws or fight again. And here, I was when it became clear what happened, that Xavier's brain is basically dying and eating itself. Pretty cool, by the way. They wanted us to think... They were definitely hinting that Xavier accidentally killed all the X-Men. And I think by the end, you're forced to accept that's what it was. Mm. But to me, in my head, I'm like, holy fucking shit. Xavier accidentally got... The first time this happened, Wolverine couldn't control himself and just lost it and killed everybody by accident or something.
Yeah.
And
I was sitting on the edge of my seat. That's
I was sitting on the edge of my seat waiting for that flashback to happen for the last 45 minutes. I'm just like, holy shit, this is going and I can 100% appreciate the decision to be we have shown so much blood and guts in this movie. It's maybe more effective for our movie to hint at what that was as opposed to explicitly tell us what happened. 100%. But for the person that has lived through 17 years and 9-10 films of X-Men at this point and had already seen them all saved, if that's going to be their end, I want to fucking see their fucking end.
But I know your immediate reaction when I say this is fuck you, but I honestly don't think this is supposed to be part of the canon. I think it's just this is a what if Wolverine story. I don't
possibly,
think,
but I don't think that changes I don't think that changes anything. I think that's relatively immaterial. And for starters, I think they definitely hinted at that, and some people have even explicitly said that, and I can understand their thinking in that way. I'm not gonna say bullshit, they're wrong, it's their fucking story, but bullshit, no. not you're wrong. I believe that's what you did. That doesn't render my reaction to it meaningless. That does not render
no.
You can't erase 9 movies before this one.
Well,
nor does it, like I said, it doesn't make this movie worse. I mean, I can we can go through the movie, we will go through the movie in more detail, and I will explain 100 different reasons why I consider it more very good than great. But I think the larger picture for me, in this case, trounces that, not in terms of the quality of the film, but more about what I want to speak to and what I think is more important in the larger picture, and particularly for a miniseries that is dedicated to discussing X-Men on film in a larger sense.
I don't know if it's because we did that or just the diminishing returns of the franchise, but just I had none of that. Like, in my head, X-Men is no longer something I'm like excited for, and that breaks my heart a bit because I, such an enthusiast before, obviously, but going into this, I was just like, Logan, okay. But
is that X-Men or is that Wolverine?
That's X-Men. Like,
but if you love Days of Future Past and you enjoyed Apocalypse, you enjoyed Apocalypse. What? Like, it's a flawed movie.
I like Apocalypse more than people give it credit, but it does still leave me unenthusiastic about X-Men as a franchise.
And that gets back to my original point of X-Men is still somehow living film to film, despite the fact that an enjoyable experience that is flawed for you kills your enthusiasm for the franchise as a whole.
It's not entirely Apocalypse, it's like an ongoing thing, like the bits of Days of Future Past that they have stuck with, the young timeline, are the bits I don't really care for. I loved watching the fucking original cast getting murdered by Sentinels and combining powers and shit like that. Like, that's what I liked about Days of Future Past.
But do you like First Class?
I like it. It doesn't do it for me like it does everyone else. I think it's fine and fun, but that wasn't like, oh man, X-Men, here we go. Like, as I said, it's 1, 2, and Days of Future Past for me. And I've been burned by Wolverine twice. And again, Apocalypse, it's better than people say it is because it's just a reactionist thing of best thing ever or worst thing ever. And when I'm sitting down and watching it, I like it, but it taints or it doesn't taint single-handedly, but after watching that, I'm not like, oh god, I can't wait for the next X-Men film. And they're going to drop a trailer in the next year and a half for their Phoenix movie, and I'm going to be like, cool. But I'm not rabid for it anymore, and that does depress me a little bit. Logan, on the other hand, I mean, obviously there's no follow-up to Logan, it's a very definitive ending, but holy shit, I love this film. I guess we should actually talk about it in the episode.
Yeah, and I mean, right away, things we can talk about. One, it's a self-contained story that provides a fucking ending of all fucking endings, one of the most definitive endings in a superhero movie ever. I mean, it was easier to write fan fiction for the next Dark Knight Rises sequel than it was to this one. This is the end. This is the end of it all.
Yeah,
one might say.
And that self-contained story, it's just, as you said, it's loosely inspired by Old Man Logan, very loosely. Logan is older. He's ostensibly the last mutant, or one of the last mutants alive. Some big event happened where most of the mutants are dead. Xavier is not well, but he is convinced that there's a new mutant out there. It turns out it's this little girl who is Matt Waters' favourite mutant, X-23, Wolverine's cloned daughter, sister, or whatever. And bad guys come for her, and he tries to get her to safety, and lots of people die on the way, including Xavier and Wolverine. It's a simple story, and it's a small... they're not trying to take anyone down, they're not trying to stop anything from happening, they're not trying to do anything like that. He's just trying to get this little girl somewhere safe, and along the way there's tender moments of bonding with normal people, and I fucking loved it. Like you said, how the end didn't make you sad like it should have. I was tearing up when Logan was saying his goodbyes to Laura and everything, and her turning the cross on his grave sideways to be an X. It's like, oh man. Two girls sitting next to me were absolutely losing it from the moment Xavier died. So that was fun. But yeah, I thought it was so emotional. I thought it was... I don't think there's been a superhero film before, and I don't see one happening soon. I mean, maybe this will influence it, but this is if anything's going to get like Oscar attention, and I'm not saying it will get nominated for Best Picture or anything, but like if any of them have a shot, it's fucking this one. Like this is a serious ass film that happens to be about a mutant and has all the violence.
I expect there to be a big push for Jackman, Stewart, and the movie. I don't think it will be successful.
I don't think it will either, but I still think it's...
I think there'll be a big push, and there'll be some buzz about it for sure. Yeah. Deadpool, oddly enough, got closer than possibly any other movie before it, other than maybe The Dark Knight. Yeah. Because if there were 10 movies the year The Dark Knight got nominated, 100% it's nominated for Best Picture. But that was the last year of 5. That's actually the reason we now have 9 or 10 every year. Mm. Deadpool seemed to have gotten frighteningly close for those who...
I think that was just people calling for something different to get looked at.
Possibly. I think a lot of people really enjoyed Deadpool.
Yeah,
I can't...
I did.
Like, I think there's enthusiasm for Deadpool on a level that goes beyond just... I think that to see it get that much buzz for Oscars 10 months later suggests there's somewhat of an enduring enthusiasm for it that goes beyond just different.
Yeah. And when you mentioned The Dark Knight, I'm reminded of you saying how some people were saying, better than The Dark Knight, best superhero film ever, etc. And when I came out of it, I had this really strong reaction. I was telling my friends about it, and someone said, oh, is it better than the Nolan Batman films? And no... But it's... Well, no, I don't think it's that far away. Like, you may laugh.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm laughing because it's not close. I'm laughing because, I don't know, there's something about, like, no.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to explain.
But it's so... It's more emotional. Like, Batman, even though it's got tremendous acting and writing and it's shot beautifully, all that, this is a far more traditional filmic story, almost. Even with guys with metal hands and people stabbing each other and stuff.
Yeah.
It felt like a real ass movie. Like that's degrading to superhero films to say that kind of thing, but it did.
No, I do genuinely think it has a shot.
Yeah.
I do think.
I don't think it'll get it, but yeah.
I think a narrative will take hold. I think Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart are two very beloved people in Hollywood. And remember, it's people in Hollywood who actually vote for these things. It's not like some mysterious pool of critics like the Golden Globes and stuff like that.
The chamber of old white men.
I think in 10 months' time you're going to be seeing this on a lot of best of 2017 lists, a lot of top 10 lists,
sure,
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think the reaction to this is also slightly different. With Deadpool, it was, this is so different in some key ways, not in every way, but in some key ways. This is more of a combination of, not only is this different, but this is great.
Yeah.
And I think as a result, it's going to come awfully close. My instinct right now is no, because it's so tough to envision it actually happening. But it's going to be fucking close. And it's going to be talked about as if it's a possibility. And it could build some momentum up very quickly where it becomes just more of a question of, does it win for things, not for Best Picture, but does it win for things instead of not being nominated at all? Like, it could get to that point. I can very easily see it get to that point.
Yeah. So you talk about Stewart and Jackman potentially getting some buzz. Do you think this is the best performance both have given in this franchise? Because obviously the chess scenes with Ian McKellen are majestic, but it's a different kind of acting than Patrick Stewart's doing here.
Yeah, I think this is the most Patrick Stewart gets to do in any X-Men movie.
By far.
Especially because he always this is the most Patrick Stewart has been in the thick of it of any X-Men movie.
Yeah.
They always had to kind of keep him to the side in a lot of ways, just because he's too powerful. Why he doesn't
just end
fix everything with James McAvoy obviously got to be was really the center of attention in the first two, and to a slightly lesser degree in the third one. But this is Stewart's big.
It's weird seeing him play like frail old man. You're used to Patrick Stewart like being an age-defying guy who you know he's older than he.
Yeah, and I would say with Jackman, I mean, we can pretty quickly break it down. Obviously better than the other two Wolverine movies.
Yeah.
2 were cameos. Don't Can't compare.
Mm-hmm. He's not good in 3.
And then it's you can't count Last Stand. He's really bad at it. Never mind, can't count it. Like he's just objectively bad in that Origins. I don't like we talked about it extensively at the time, but he's just like objectively terrible at acting in those 2 movies.
What's going on? No clue. Run, run.
That's the first image that always comes to my mind. I forgot about that line of dialogue though, but I always think of that image when I think of Last Stand.
I think before this, if we ignore this from the equation, his best performance is in X-Men 1, I think. Like the stuff with Rogue on the train and...
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly.
He's front and center in 2, and he's like so charismatic, and like all the trailers were like, oh, look at Wolverine being cool. But I still think 1 is a better performance, acting-wise.
I don't want to undersell his work in Days of Future Past, because I really think he keeps that movie together in a way that is subtle for him. And that's a movie where he's really not designed to look cool.
No.
And I was actually just thinking about it today, because I've been thinking about this episode that we're recording for pretty much all week, and I've just been... He doesn't even really get to fight much in Days of Future Past. They have a couple of obligatory moments where he gets to do stuff, but not really. That's really just him just being like a subtle, mature human, which is an odd note to put for Wolverine to play, but a kind of a welcome one when you think of the complete picture that is Hugh Jackman's Wolverine.
He's the older Wolverine in his young body, so... Yeah,
it's
he grew up when we weren't watching.
Yeah, it's kind of a really cool thing that we get to have as a fan to get that experience. So I think yes. My answer is yes. It's also so different in a way that, like with Xavier, it's so much clearer. He gets so much more to do. He's so much more in the thick of it. That's so head and shoulders above the work he gets to do the rest of the time. With Jackman, it's a little bit less clear for me, but I would certainly not fight. I would not argue against it.
I think this is the most animalistic he's been as Logan, and that's an idea they constantly talk about when they're doing pre-press for these films. That like, oh, you know, he's part animal and whatnot. And this, you really get it. Like, he seems super fucking savage, particularly in that scene at the end in the woods. Like, that does not seem like a human being at times. Like, he is fucking going for it.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like, that scene really reminded me of the earlier films, like him fighting in a forest. And actually, I guess this isn't good, but it reminded me of the scene in Last Stand where he's being a dumbass and trying to take that camp by himself, which is potentially one of the
stupidest moments in the franchise's history.
Yeah. But it felt fitting. It felt like a good goodbye area for him to be fighting in the woods.
Yes. Oh, no, for sure. But I'm thinking of The Last Stand.
Oh,
that might be one of the stupidest moments in franchise history. But yeah, and I think part of the reason is that they get so much to do in this movie is that the villain is not a person, a thing. It is time. Time is the villain here.
Oh, God.
And those haunting words at the end of the first trailer of Logan, you still have time, deeply misleading. Neither of these two men have really any time left.
And, like, you can tell, like, he wants to die, and he wants... I think a part of him wants to, like, euthanize Xavier, and part of him wants to blow his own brains out. He's carrying around an adamantium bullet all the time. And, like, he's so world-weary and everything. Like, that seems to be the story they're telling. Like, he wants to... He acknowledges Xavier is incredibly dangerous, because he's having these seizures. He has to take medication to sort of stave it off, suppress his powers, because he has these seizures, and because of his powers, it is cripplingly painful and potentially lethal to people around him. And they have this line about how his brain is considered like a weapon of mass destruction or whatever. And he and Caliban are just caring for this sick old Xavier and, like, keeping him prisoner in a tank. And, like, this isn't a life for him. It's cruel. And you just get this sense that he just can't... He can't kill him. But he I think part of his brain knows that would be what is best.
Yeah. There's this great dynamic of Charles is the dying parent here. And Wolverine is the last child left to take care of them.
Yeah. And like the least likely and yet the strongest bond somehow.
Yeah. I think that they at times I feel like romanticize their relationship a little bit too much.
Yeah.
In the sense that by no objective measure should these two be? I mean, it should be acknowledged how weird it is that these are the last two left.
Yeah. It's like Wolverine and the X-Men, where just for no apparent reason, Wolverine is like, "Oh, only you can lead them, Logan, and now you are my pupil or whatever."
Yes, and it's not that it's a bad, because if anything, huge like.
I think it works because of the real actors, because we've seen them. They've been there since day one, and Ian McKellen is obviously tapped out. But
they can trade on that.
Yeah,
that genuine bond, that genuine attachment we have to the actors in a way that Wolverine and the X-Men could not, and that kind of compensates for that weirdness. But they sometimes every once in a while they'll kind of stray into this territory where we're supposed to believe that they are actually way closer than in any reality they could have been, or at least not the closest. Yeah, anyway, so they're both fighting against time. Charles's brain is eating him from the inside alive. He is basically a walking time bomb, pun not intended. And Wolverine and Caliban are basically existing to subdue him.
Yeah.
Wolverine
with this big plan of buying a boat and just going out into the water, where I guess if he wouldn't be able to hurt anyone if he did have a seizure or whatever. Is the idea?
I don't know. It's bizarre.
You just keep talking about this boat.
But we're going to get a boat.
And I think, doesn't one of them almost say, we're not going to get a fucking boat? They all know
I think Charles may say that at some point. Regardless of some of the awkwardness of pretending that these two were kind of destined to be the last two or anything like that, their relationship here mostly is that of the child who's ready for their parent to die.
Yeah.
Because that parent is at this point more of a burden than and they're a shadow of the loved one that they once were.
And the sort of getting really frustrated with each other when he's forcing him to take pills and get in the car and do this and do that, and they're both furious with each other.
This is not the Charles Xavier of 1 and 2.
Sticking his tongue out and swearing at him, and
this is petulant old man Charles, who I've never seen an interpretation of him this way, but it was very well done.
Yeah, I thought it was really good.
Very human, and certainly conceivable, believable enough that it could end this way for him.
Well, he's meant to be 90-something in this, so...
I'm not even going to take out my calculator to calculate.
Yeah, I know, they must have aged him, but in one scene...
I refuse.
In one scene, it's oh, you're the most wanted octogenarian. He says, I'm a nonagenarian, or something, which is 90.
Gotcha, I didn't pick up on what that meant.
Yeah, and I was wait, so you're saying he was now born in the 40s?
But and Hugh Jackman, Wolverine, Logan is also fighting time. He is dying from adamantium poisoning, which is such a debilitating sickness that his mutant ability cannot keep up with it much longer. Clearly, he is slowly losing his vision. Yep. His hair is gray. His wounds heal internally, but not externally, or perhaps they don't even.
Scars, sort of seeping a little bit, but
he's limping.
Yeah.
Whenever he doesn't have an adrenaline rush, he is dying. His body is failing him finally, and this is the end for them. And along comes
just a ray of fucking sunshine.
Yes, X-23.
Oh, shit.
And
come on, how cool is she, man?
No, she's fantastic.
Yeah.
She's fantastic. Charles has been communicating with her telepathically for a while, although he can't really express how or why or be any more specific about it.
So he just sounds like a crazy old man.
And it turns out that the business at the end of the credits of Apocalypse was this fucking company run by possibly Mr. Sinister, but we've never seen in the film.
Yeah,
actually steals the DNA of Logan and produces offspring or future children from that. And I guess the one surviving one is in fact Laura, and so they come to Charles refers to her as this is his daughter, and Laura represents something to these two characters beyond just being a cool ass-kicking 10-year-old little girl. This is Charles's last chance to mold a young mind, his final student. He gets to be the paternal figure once again, and he gets to live out his fantasy of creating that family he never felt like he truly ever had one final time.
Yeah. While Logan gets to protect someone and live for someone and have a purpose and
Yes, and it is well
and make a human connection that he refused to make or had ripped away from him, so he gave up on trying. One that isn't based on sexually harassing a girl who works in the school you work at.
Yes. This is by far I guess the Wolverine, I forget her name, but that relationship with the friend, not the daughter, was okay.
Yeah,
but this is by far the most mature relationship with a female that Hugh Jackman has in the X-Men franchise.
So good together. I don't know where the fuck they found this little girl, Daphne Keane, but she is gonna be a star.
Oh, apparently her parents are actors, so she's very, I guess, professional and all that stuff.
I think, barring something weird happening, I think she is going to be a star. Like, she is so good in this. Like, she is believably the age they're saying. She's doing the physical scenes. She's mute for the first, 2/3 of the film, to the point you think she can't speak, and yet she sells every scene she's in. And then when she does start talking, she is fucking firing off Spanish at lightning pace, speaks English, emotional scenes, cries, all of it. Like, child actors are notoriously not good, and yet she fucking nails it.
This is one of the best child performances I've ever seen.
Yeah, by far. And I think, I haven't really...
By the way, there's 5 of them total that I like ever, but
fine, but...
This is one of the best
That's high praise. I haven't really seen the buzz, but my expectation is the internet is going to be obsessed with this character anyway. And it's going to be like Hit Girl 2.0 almost, where people were fucking obsessed with Chloe Grace.
This time it's good.
Yeah, exactly. So good. And the scenes where she's punching him in the face, and it's it almost looked like they really did that. I don't know if they did. I don't know if Hugh Jackman said, "Hey, little girl, punch me in the nose." But just angry at him all the time, and so good.
So they go on a lovely little family vacation, trying to get this girl off to the sanctuary where they only had the coordinates to. On this little family vacation, they are being chased by a series of villainous sidekicks.
Yes.
In this case, they are sidekicks to time, because we never really get to see a big bad villain, thankfully.
Well, let's talk about this. Richard E. Grant plays Xander Rice, who's the scientist who did all this. He is pointless. You could splice him out of this film, make it slightly tighter, have Boyd Holbrook, who plays Donald Pierce, be the main villain, and this film would be better. I thought Richard E. Grant was a waste of screen time. Not that he's terrible, but it's this doesn't really set up enough.
Added nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And it might be on purpose, because he dies by just he's starting to give this big speech, and Wolverine just fucking caps him. And that might be on purpose to sell the situation, because that's another thing. He doesn't use guns in any of the films, I don't think. I guess in the flashback scenes of the war, maybe. And he fucking blows this dude's head off almost at the end. And I guess it's to sell, this is how serious Laura is to him. Whatever. You can make that excuse. Richard E. Grant shouldn't have been in this film. Boyd Holbrook, I thought, for a guy that, I hear his name. I haven't really seen him in much. I think he's in Milk. I thought he was fantastic. This sort of real Sons of Anarchy sort of vibe. It was kind of here's a biker gang chasing Logan across the country, and some of them have got metal hands, and I thought that was tremendous. And I thought he was doing well enough, and I thought the 3 heroes were giving good enough performances, and you got the element of time. I think there was enough there to do this film without Richard E. Grant or any of that shit.
Yes, and I would say on this film, just purely within its own vacuum, the weakest elements of it are by far that component and
X-24.
X-24.
It's a fun moment when he first shows up. And you're like, oh shit, it's young Wolverine, but then that's immediately over, and it's don't bring him back. And then this really underwhelming fight at the end. It's ugh.
That was... You know this movie is good when no one is complaining about that. Exactly. Because that is the stupidest fucking thing ever, and it's so dumb.
That's them revisiting Origins with their makeshift Deadpool. We can see through his eyes and control him. It's what are you doing? What are you doing?
It was like I said, the movie's good because that is so bad, and it should be on the list of how embarrassed. In a normal Wolverine movie, you would look at that and be example number 1 of how stupid and embarrassing this movie is. this movie's so good that you can ignore it, which gets back to kind of a lot of what X-Men is in a lot of ways, which is that when it's good, you can much more easily ignore the stupidity, and when it's bad, the stupidity just really stands out all the more. That's a theme with the X-Men movies we've seen time and time again, is that there's always a certain level of stupidity in them. This one is no different.
Yeah, you splice him out, you splice Richard E. Grant out, you have just this gang of crazies with their metal hands chasing Wolverine. It works fine, in my opinion.
Yeah. And when they said they had something special for them, I'm like, okay, maybe we're going to get a little curveball here. Probably not necessarily like, no, oh, no. And I thought that possibly took away some of my devastation when Charles died, was just like the sheer confusion with what...
It was a really confusing scene. Like,
I don't mean like cognitively confusing. I mean just like, why
artistically,
is there a
why did you do
fucking clone of fucking Wolverine in this fucking good grounded movie? Motherfuckers!
The moment where like it seems like it's actually Logan leaning in, and then he stabs him, you're like, wait, what? And then the immediate reveal of X-24, and it's like, oh. And then it's like, oh no, not now.
I could kind of tell something was up, so I was just like a little bit ready for it. So it didn't really. And then also they needed Charles to linger on a few more beats.
Yeah,
he should have, when he put him in the truck, he should have said, "Go get the girl, go get the girl." Because Logan at this point is on such a one-track mind of, I'm first going to save Charles, and if the girl's still alive, fine. That's basically how he was operating for the first 2/3 of the movie, and we needed him to survive after that, where we needed his death to happen a few minutes later to really just...
And it's almost...
It's like that. It's like at the end of Phantom Menace, where you're going from 4 different plots at once, and none of them sink in. It's not quite as bad as that, but you get what I'm saying. Like, there's so much going on in that moment, and there's so much new information that we're getting that Charles's death does not have this impact, is not maximized in a way that it should have been, considering that, you know, he's dying for like the 10th time on screen, and this one's supposed to be the real one.
And if that was just the angry farmer neighbors or whatever, like in some crazy shootout, and one bullet misses and hits Charles,
probably
it's
for the
better.
best.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And instead you have this confusing thing of, and now we have the secret second Wolverine.
Yep.
Here's Richard E. Grant to do the evil finger pyramid.
And I think that is definitely a component of my argument against this being a great movie. I think that's such a buzzkill for me in so many ways, Richard E. Grant and X-24, that it takes away from Charles' death and it takes away from the conclusion just enough. Not like this, not undermines the movie.
Yeah.
There's a reason why no one's complaining about it.
Yeah.
But it takes away a little bit for me. Just enough, I should say. Some other things. Anyways, this all leads to this big showdown in the woods. Laura has found her fellow genetic lab-created mutants.
Mutant in a cave.
They are being hunted by Boyd Holbrook and Richard E. Grant and the Reavers.
Yeah.
Wolverine takes some steroids and chases after them. This is really fantastic.
Yeah. The scenes of them fighting side by side, I was like, it was electric, man. Like seeing the two of them like jumping over each other and shit.
Not just that, but they sold it so well with Jackman just barely hanging up. Like his body is so oddly shaped in this movie, where it's like it's all muscle, but it's like sagging at the same time. It's very bizarre. And
it's like someone who used to be in his physical peak, and it's like he can't quite go. He hasn't slipped into being obese, but like, you know, he can't keep
it's
that
like
up.
He has all that muscle still there, but it's like it's a little off.
It doesn't work quite.
And like he's hobbling, he can barely run, he can barely stand up straight. It's very clear that he's going to his death in this moment. And
I love how quickly the drug wears off as well.
Yes, like
it doesn't even get him the whole way through that first stage of the fight. Like,
a lesser movie would have had it going right to the end, but
and then it runs out just when he has to fight X-24,
and your heart sinks a little bit, because at that moment you know it's really over. And leads to a big showdown. They kill Boyd Holbrook in a ridiculously sickening fashion. Wolverine pulls out a gun to shoot Richard E. Grant, which was a pretty great moment. X-24 kills Wolverine in one of the most gruesome manners possible by shoving his entire abdomen through a tree trunk. And then Laura blows off X-24's head with that with Chekhov's adamantium bullet. She gets to break some hearts and call Logan Dad before he finally knows what it feels like to die.
It got me right there, man. Right there.
Yeah. There's a lot more stuff we need to discuss, I think. I think, much like the best X-Men films, the big notes, the macro notes, this movie knocks that out of the fucking park.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think Charles' death should have been better. I think, there's a lot of things about this movie that I wish were better.
Yeah.
But from beginning to end, it is compelling. It is exciting. It's so fucking funny for so much of it.
Yeah, it is.
The acting is really well done. The people who needed to be good were good, and they nailed it. They nailed this movie in a way that you could not have possibly expected.
And I love that you don't end with the kids reaching the place, that you stay on his grave and they just disappear into the distance, and it's just end credits. Johnny Cash. Black screen, no end scene. I knew that. I still heard people boo when there was no end credit scene.
I kind of sensed it wasn't coming, and the cleanup
Mangold
staff
swore it wasn't coming. But
yeah, and the cleanup staff was looking very impatient and turned on the lights as brightly as possible. And I was like, okay, there's clearly nothing.
Yeah.
But
see, we talked about how they need to take Richard E. Grant out and X-24 out. The way I would have ended that is to me, that bullet he was keeping, that was Jack Sparrow's one shot that he was saving for Barbossa all those years. And this is the bullet he's going to kill himself with. It's potentially the only adamantium bullet there is, the only way he can kill himself. And instead,
wouldn't it just erase his memories?
I also love how that fucking blew X-24's head off, but Stryker unloaded into Wolverine multiple times and he shrugged it off. Anyway, he should have just used it to kill Pierce to save Laura. This is his one bullet. He can only use it on himself, but the only way he can save her is to shoot Pierce with it. And he sacrifices what he wants for her. That's how they should have fucking ended it.
Something.
But again, it gets
or
away
maybe
with
he
it.
finally wants to live at a certain point, and
but then he dies.
But like I said, he finally decides he's going to
in that moment.
If let's say X-24 Richard E. Grant never pop up in this movie, he decides I'm going to go off with them. He could even leave that bullet behind.
Yeah.
Boyd Holbrook finds it there, recognizes what it is right away, later kills him with it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, but just so emotional, so funny, so good all the way through that he gets away with all of that. And while every moment X-24 was on the screen, my intellectual mind was this is a bad filming decision. I still was never really, I wasn't taken out of it enough. They had done enough to keep me focused and there, so that when it ended, I was just so in the story. That it left me with that big reaction. Not, that would have been good if. I can sit here and play armchair quarterback with all this shit now, but watching that film, I had no complaints while I was watching it, really. But my biggest complaint was that Gabriella, the sort of the nurse that snuck Laura out of the facility, she's apparently a professional video editor who does ADR and stuff and puts it all on her phone. It's really impressive that she did it all. Woman from Orange is the New Black and everything, isn't she?
I don't watch it.
Oh, okay. No, that video she has on her phone, the sort of Deus Ex.
Absurd.
Yeah, the exposition is just so suspiciously well edited, and she's got all this footage she shouldn't have. Where it's from inside rooms. And
there's a whole other movie with her just busily staying with her MacBook Pro on the road.
Exactly. While Laura's sleeping, she's just editing the shit out of this video. Because she's still talking, and there's different footage on screen. You can't just easily do that shit on a phone when you're on the run. Anyway, it's the future. Maybe the phones are super.
Let's dive into some of the smaller parts of this movie. Got to start with Stephen Merchant as Caliban.
Okay.
This was
not what I wanted.
The good and the bad cancel itself out. I think probably you're there. Stephen Merchant as Caliban. I think the decision to include Caliban was such an empty we need a power. This power makes the story far easier to tell.
The two of them do have a relationship in the comics.
Yes.
They are like buds.
Well, I mean, that doesn't...
Yeah, no, I know.
You
could pick from a whole bunch of people, but yeah, he is the convenient one to exist.
With that being said, though, I think a big theme in this movie is that Charles and Logan are running away in a lot of ways from what they've done in their lives, and Caliban does fit nicely into that. Caliban, based on the 2.5 minutes of screen time in Apocalypse and some brief exposition in this movie, clearly a selfish fucking dick who sold his soul to help humans hunt down mutants. As his penance, he is living as a gentleman's gentleman for Charles Xavier and Hugh Jackman, and it's one of those also... First off, by the way, I have an albino student. They do not melt in the sun instantly, in case anyone's wondering.
He's a mutant one, so that's different.
I'm not saying they purposely rub oil on themselves and run into the sun. They're a little more sensitive to the sun, I'm sure. They do not bake in the sun instantaneously. Just to be clear to the audience at home.
Well, you are in Jersey, and he's in the hottest part of the country, but maybe.
Sure.
And it's the future, global warming, it's going to have gotten hotter.
Anyway,
sorry.
So they built this his final moment at least. And Boyd Holbrook mocks him when they first capture him. It's like, I bet your mother told you to beware of the light, huh? And so they built this moment where Stephen Merchant managed to get a hold of a couple of grenades in a last-second attempt to buy Logan some more time. And he pulls the things and says, beware the light. And it's meant to be this big moment, but it's that means nothing. That is an ultimate, that sounds really cool on paper moment, but it means nothing.
Yeah. He also kills himself and no one else.
Yeah. He could have thrown the grenades.
He could have.
That would have been more helpful. And it was one of those moments of they wanted to build to this moment where this selfish character did something selfless, but in the end, he accomplished nothing by this, and he would have been better off staying alive a little bit longer, probably, or in any way attempting to help. If Caliban was a character in 2 more movies, this would have felt a little bit more satisfying.
Yeah. That they're trying to take a cameo and ignore that cameo, really.
Yeah.
and
it's one of those... Yeah, it's kind of like I said, though, this is the modus operandi from X-Men since Last Stand has been, we are telling our story, and we're going to try to tell it as well as we can. Rest of the movies be damned. This is another example of that.
Do you know who should have been there? Iceman. It should have been Logan, Iceman, and Xavier.
Yeah.
He's melting in the heat or whatever.
I can't even think of who would be a better choice, but it's not any... I'm not going to sit here and go anyone. I do enjoy Stephen Merchant for sure.
Yeah.
But,
it just didn't really play into his strengths, I don't think.
No.
He's not it's not that he can't do a serious role. He's fine.
It was weird. Not bad, but weird. We got onto Richard E. Grant and X-24 already. I hesitate to say a huge miscalculation because that makes it sound like it kind of ruined the movie, but it was a significant miscalculation.
I wonder if at some point he was mandated to be Mr. Sinister, because Bryan Singer was called the shot. He was like, oh yeah, Mr. Sinister's going to be in Logan, and then Mangold clearly went in a more serious direction. I wonder if he was under contract, so they had to use him. So they were like, we'll just make you a scientist. I don't know.
Yeah, something. They didn't do that right. And I almost feel like... I don't want to say they could have easily cut it out even after they finished filming everything, but... Man... it just wasn't right.
Cut him out, release it in black and white, as they say they're going to.
I like to thank James Mangold for telling me to wait to purchase my Blu-ray until they release the Chrome edition, unlike the fuckers from Mad Max. Fury Road.
Man. You got fucked twice by that film. Oh.
So this brings me to this next big point, and I think you know exactly what I'm going to have a fucking problem with.
Is that Eric LaSalle?
It fucking is Eric LaSalle, star VR, and Elise Neal, star Scream 2.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, did you recognize her?
No.
Okay, I'm going to start off with this. This probably could be its own separate episode right here. This rant.
Okay.
We'll release this, but no.
We'll release this in black and white.
Yeah. There's no need to be racist, Matthew. it is truly embarrassing that for the X-Men cinematic universe, that in this story, although they've gone away from it largely, of oppression, that these three fucking characters might be the most well-developed people of color in the entire fucking franchise. I think there's a chance we get to know them almost as well as we get to know Storm in 5 fucking movies.
That better.
That being said, holy fucking shit. X-Men just can't get out of its own way when it comes to people of color in their fucking movies. Holy fucking shit. First off, Charles fucking Xavier. What a selfish fucking cunt of a man. Holy shit. I hate using that word. I think that's a nasty word. I don't like using it.
I know.
I'm not British.
Yeah. Big fan.
But like, it's one thing to be like purposely ignorant in your first 2 movies because you're so conditioned to not meddle in the lives of others. But to just be like, I want to have one more fucking night as a family.
Aren't there people chasing us with guns and shit?
You know there are people fucking hunting you. They just found your last spot. Why on the fucking planet are you ensnaring these other fucking people into your fucking scheme?
Yeah.
And it's so dumb and selfish and not acknowledged in any way. And,
I mean, I think he tries to say, like, oh, we haven't slept in 2 days and we haven't eaten or whatever.
Yeah,
but, like,
yeah,
fuck you.
yeah.
Like, go stay in a motel.
You, like, are being a fucking asshole here. Yeah. And it's not acknowledged in any way.
Yeah.
It's romanticized. I think it's played to be a romantic beat. And it's totally, that desire for family is fine, but that needs to be where where Wolverine substitutes. You need to chill, like, fuck out. Your family is dead and you fucking killed them. Like, that, like, you are not bringing more death and destruction onto somebody else. Something like that. Something to that effect needed to happen there.
I was stunned he agreed to let them stay the night. Like, the dinner was one thing, but then it's like, yeah, okay, we can sleep. It's like, no, you fucking can't. They're, like, barely behind you.
Yeah. Not to mention they're retreading a fucking Origins Wolverine trope of...
Yes. Yes.
Wolverine runs into the fucking farmers and the farmers fucking die. Yeah. I mean, like, there's
if
a good chance...
If you own a farm and Hugh Jackman shows up, you're dead.
There's a good chance that people who made this movie have never seen Origins Wolverine. I think there's a legitimate chance that's true, to be fair.
Good for them.
I think there's a legitimate chance, so, more power to them. The fact that these characters are just props for that bullshit and just exist to help. I mean, it's just like, come on. Like, come on.
I thought they were...
You
are right. They are... The scenes are touching and whatnot. It's just the sort of time pressure sensitivity didn't jive with it. Like, in a world where, like, they've actually gotten away and, like, the Reavers don't know where they are or whatever. Maybe.
And I think there was even an opportunity for them to go on the run with them.
Yeah.
I think that actually would have been totally justified.
That kid is a mutant.
Or something. Like, they just... All that destruction happens, and they go on the run with them somehow. Like, to escape the Reavers. And maybe that would have been too much, but either do it right or don't do it at all.
Yeah.
As soon as they popped up, because I saw Eric LaSalle and Lisa Neal in the credits, I'm like, they must have some sort of role. I was like, oh, motherfucker. Like, I just knew what was going to happen.
There was a chance Eric LaSalle was going to be in a corridor doing, like, this huge fist pump. Like, that's that enduring image from ER, the only one I remember.
Yeah. Bad. Bad. Lazy storytelling, racist bullshit. Get the fuck out of here with that nonsense.
Still, the kid in X-23, good scenes.
Yes, and that's the thing is that they could have constructed the story in an entirely different way to make them a bigger part of it or a less ridiculous part of it. Even if they wanted them just to cameo in that scene and then they move on from there, that would have felt less complete bullshit to me. But it'd be an odd use of two, experienced veteran actors, but still. Just bullshit.
I think it was just literally the writers saying, okay, we need a midway point where they can sit and breathe and talk and reflect.
And that's fine. They just should have constructed it in a less bullshit way.
Yeah, it's a bad way. But yeah, I really like X, her silently sort of just look like. I thought they were going to go more into it than they did, but the idea that she's potentially like has a crush on her first crush or whatever, and stalking him almost.
There are good moments. Those fucking farmers, like when that was actually genuinely the farmers who were causing all those problems, I was just like, is this actually happening? Like, I thought it was far-fetched that the Reavers had.
Like, no, it's not farmers, it's the Reavers. They've cut off your water.
Yeah, I know. I was like, that. I think that would have been stupider, but I was like, we're actually dealing with this subplot now. These farmers are now actual people in this movie that exist.
Yeah.
And now they have a second scene. But
what was Logan's plan there? He kicks their ass, then he's gone, and then they leave the farmer alone forever?
Because they're fucking selfish pricks, these two. Like, there's no reckoning for the fact that these two are selfish fucking pricks.
Yeah, he was making that way worse. But that's Logan always. He's like willing to fight someone, not realizing he won't be there next.
And maybe that could have been a moment being like, dude, what the fuck are you doing now? Where are you? You're going to be gone tomorrow. I just have to deal with these fucking people.
Exactly,
like,
yeah. Get off my farm. Also,
yeah.
Your daughter's weird, man.
Yeah.
Stole my son's iPod.
Like she eats mashed potatoes with her hand. Like, she's a fucking savage. But, like I said, that's bad. The Richard E. Grant X-24 stuff is bad. Yeah. The Caliban stuff is decidedly
now we're saying all average. This, I feel really depressed because like I feel like we're ruining the magic.
No, and I think that really gets us back to, in some ways, this was an incredibly fucking fitting end for X-Men.
Yeah,
this was a movie that worked in large moments. It was funny. It was fun. The action that they had was good. They did not overwhelm us with action.
Well. Like, I loved X-23 against all the Reavers in the beginning. Like when she's just sitting there eating cereal, waiting for them, and it's like, okay, now I'll kick all your asses.
This was one of the best acted franchises when it's good. It got to go out with probably the best acting possibly the franchise ever had. It got to go out finally with adulation and applause.
Yeah.
It got to go out. Box office wise, it's going to be one of the most successful X-Men films ever. Yep. The word of mouth is insane.
And now Fox can go off and make like rip off Marvel films with questionable teen actors.
Yeah, that's okay.
And the X-Men that had all these good actors in it, and like we're familiar with, that's done now, and it's a nice ending for it.
And if nothing else, they got a nice ending that both was good in a vacuum, yet for my money still was a painful memory of everything that we did not get. Because if you think about where X-Men started, and you think in your head, X-Men's going to tell 10 films from 2000 to 2017, and it's going to end on that note. Wow, you would think, what a journey this must be.
They behave as if it was.
Yes, that's the thing. They act like there wasn't all this bullshit in between. And there's nothing they could do about that, of course. But,
my big question from all this is, where the fuck was this when they did the Japan story? Like, because that was my biggest cynicism when the reviews were coming out. I was like, I have literally no reason to believe this film will be good because I've seen this film before. They did it already, and now they're just going to make it R-rated because Deadpool made a ton of money. Oh, and they used Johnny Cash in the trailer. Big whoop. But then it's like, oh no, it is good. Where the fuck was this? I guess he made a Western, which is what he likes to make.
I mean, like 3:10 to Yuma's is only other movie that I would really like. It's a pretty good movie.
Yeah, pretty good movie.
Yeah, I don't understand how bad the Wolverine was, considering it had the same
basic people
creatively had it. Yeah,
and same bullshit said beforehand, where it's like, oh yeah, we feel that this time we really need to blah 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 blah.
And I was so cynical about this one in part because one, it's the same team as the Wolverine, and it seemed like they convinced themselves the Wolverine was good.
Yeah.
And I would say the Wolverine, while incredibly more coherent and film-like, not much better than the worst X-Men movies. Nope. Simply for how boring it is.
I think it's way down.
Like it gets put.
I'd put it second to last.
I put it above Last Stand. But...
Oh yeah. I think Last Stand's the worst, and then.
So you think Origins is actually better?
Well, I'd rather watch Origins.
Yeah. I'd rather watch Origins too because it's like kind of the same way I love to watch Troll 2.
This is the thing. I don't like to think of films in terms of better and good and bad. It's just like, what do I like about them? And like, I would rather watch that. And to me, that counts more than is this a coherent story that doesn't have plot holes and stuff like that?
Yeah, but I mean, like, to me, we're getting to the difference between a 2 and a 1.5 out of fucking 10. So I'm not really I'm not going to split hairs about this.
Sure. Also, Tim Riggins is in that film, so I mean, come on. Taylor Kitsch, everyone. Taylor Kitsch.
But
now we get to think about how badly they will execute the bringing of X-23 into the young timeline. Jean will reach across the cosmos as Phoenix and pull this girl from the future.
Because they're not going to let this cash cow.
Fuck no, why would you? Like, I know it's like artistically bad, but she was awesome and they need to use that.
Yeah,
I was convinced.
I
told it. I don't know if I said it on the podcast, but I told you. Like, I was convinced this film would end with Wolverine has a chance to go back in time again and fix everything, and instead he sends Laura so that she can go live a life that's better, and he's like done everything he can do or some shit. I'm really glad they didn't do that, but now it's like, but how are you going to put her into the? I don't know, but yeah, I feel for sure she's coming back.
Yeah.
And they're going to make that film with Sophie Turner, and allegedly they're making that New Mutants film. And Deadpool 2 is happening, and there was a teaser in America that we didn't get here.
Oh, really?
I mean, I've seen it. It's on YouTube, but
it's nothing special. But,
it's fine. You get the joke, and then they still tell the joke for another couple of minutes. But yeah, it's fine. I still think that film's like well over a year away from existing. I don't think they've actually finished writing it. I don't know. No,
they have. I don't think they have. But I think it's kind of funny. But you watch this movie and it's supposed to be like this definitive end to Logan and Charles, but it leaves you with a million questions about now what? And
like I said, they now make these sort of knockoff Marvel films that are like,
more colorful.
His Sophie Turner, etc. And like, there's this guy, we've got to stop him, and it's just going to be that every time. When they should just be doing, the life and times of the school. Just like here's some wacky classmates having a little adventure together,
having a laugh, as you Brits like to say,
having a laugh. Yeah,
having a laugh.
Wow. Okay.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeehaw!
You're welcome.
That's the equivalent. Like me doing a cowboy voice is the equivalent.
You're welcome.
Okay.
You're welcome. Extras for life. Way better than the original Office.
Okay.
I don't know I don't know. Like, I'm not confident about anything. I'm not convinced. I'm waiting any day for an announcement saying the next X-Men film is not coming.
I think that one is coming. I think New Mutants won't happen.
Okay. But
I think Deadpool saved them. I think if Deadpool didn't exist, there wouldn't be another X-Men. Well, there will eventually be. But I don't think the Apocalypse sequel happens without Deadpool.
Possibly. And
the parts in Apocalypse where they're just a bunch of kids at the mall in brightly coloured costumes, I was like, I'd watch more of that. So but they're gonna fucking tell Dark Phoenix, and that's the opposite of that.
And it kind of also it started to make me thinking about Apocalypse again, and I wish Apocalypse was the death of Mystique and the bringing back of Magneto into the fold, and he should have been the one leading them at the very end there. And I say that for two reasons. One aspect of Logan that we did actually forget to talk about was this is the first X-Men movie of any kind to acknowledge X-Men comic books.
Yeah, I really like that. And one of the kids has a Wolverine doll.
Yeah. And while I believe the writers and the makers of this movie when they say this basically is a one-off, does not exist in any other timeline, part of the reason why I think you can easily ignore that is that the events of Days of Future Past and Apocalypse put the X-Men into the role of hero in the public eye by the end of Apocalypse.
Sure.
It's very easy to conceive of a future after that where they are beloved heroes to the world, much more, as in some interpretations of X-Men, I believe. Or they become this, at least, cult hero or something of some kind, with the colorful costumes and all that.
Remember the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah. And it would be wonderful. At that point, it would feel like we actually genuinely have two fully distinct timelines from X-Men and from the First Class timeline.
Yeah, the two trilogies.
And I'd be perfectly fine with that for sure.
I really like the reveal that she'd gotten Eden from a comic book. I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
Now you don't even have anywhere to go.
Yeah, and
yeah, I thought it was interesting. Like, you haven't really seen that kind of thing.
No.
Before.
I mean, the Marvel movies acknowledge that the heroes are merchandised, but not.
And
in
I
a way
really like that. Actually, I like the guys on the street selling the.
Yeah.
Which one is it? Is it Doctor Strange? Or it's like footage of the incident or something?
I can't remember.
One of them.
Spider-Man, the upcoming Spider-Man definitely has something about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good spot in this movie. But this is I think the meandering nature of this episode of our podcast after we stop talking about Logan is perfectly fitting because
very reflective.
In reality we have no fucking idea where X-Men's going.
Nope. Well, we know one specific way, and it dictates the future of this show and our podcast schedule. Legion is the sort of one bright spot they've got that is definitively happening because it is ongoing as we speak. And that will wrap up in a few weeks, and when it does, we will do a podcast on that. That will be the next excellent adventure we have.
But after that, Mike and Matt's X-Cellent Adventures is on a very long hiatus.
Yeah, that's going in the vault.
Because Deadpool 2, earliest 2018.
Yep. And
there is really no momentum on any of the other X-Men movies.
Yeah. But, hopefully, other things on the horizon. Our next big project will be Firefly. But we kind of want to... We're enjoying this break of... we just did all of Batman, and it was... We did more Batman than we did X-Men. Yeah, and I liked it all individually, but it got a bit much. So we're reveling in this sort of isolated nature right now, and there won't be an episode next week. We're going to do a couple of just standalone episodes. We're going to do the 2 Hellboy films... because why not? And we're going to do Watchmen, I believe. So, looking forward to the controversy of the Watchmen discussion immensely. Because that film is undiscussable without controversy.
Fun game. Walk up to a fan of the Watchmen movie and tell them, I really think they just were too faithful to the book. Just watch it happen. Just it's a fun game that I really suggest you play. Okay. Because the reaction is delightful.
Indeed. So no episode next week. I guess Hellboy first and then Watchmen. Let's just really work up to Watchmen.
Sure,
I don't know.
I think that's an equal amount of screen time that we actually have to watch, right? Each, so that's nice.
Probably. And then it will be Legion. And then maybe we'll head straight into Firefly, but if not, Firefly is on the horizon. Yeah, this has been another episode of The Real World. Check out some of our written content that actually exists now. It was just a fever dream, but now, stuff all over the place. Mike wrote about Mad Max and his experience with X-Men over the years. I reviewed John Wick 2, or Chapter 2. We should have an article... any day now, maybe it's up by the time you're listening to this, where we reveal our final ranking of the Batman pantheon. I'm not saying that's waiting on Mike to pull his end down, but So check all that out.
At some point in April, we will have Firefly now, Serenity later.
No place to hide, no place to run, no place to run. Today the mission has now begun. X-Men.